20th. I announce that this meeting of the Regional School Committee is being recorded by Dave Saunders of Wilbraham Public Access and may also be digitally recorded by the committee's recording secretary. If there is anyone else present who is also recording this meeting, please let me know by stating your name for the record. There's no one else recording. Statement the record reflect. Is there anyone? Let the record reflect that no one has indicated that they are recording the meeting.
Hey, John.
We lost one already.
Oh,
I asked a couple times. I called you, but I didn't get you. I'm just wondering what time commitment you both have, because both of you have kind of hefty things you want to say.
I'll make you a canvas. I actually don't have a ton to say. It's
Okay.
very concise, unless there are questions. So,
Okay.
how long do you need, Steve?
You can go first if you want.
Sure. Happy to.
So we'll start with.
What do we have to do with Pledge of Allegiance?
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Lisa, will you lead us?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
John, I'll be right back.
All right.
Are we okay to get started?
We are all okay to get started.
All right.
I just had.
I can't hear anything now.
We can hear you. All right, I'll play with it. In the meantime,
Okay,
I'll act it out while they're talking.
If you need to put me on the phone, that would work too.
Okay, I'm just gonna fix it. Thanks. Bye. Okay, so I have two items. Oh, sorry.
I just wanted to ask, the first time we talked and the second time we talked, we were talking about the update on the grant. Is this the update on the grant?
Yes, there'll be a professional development update from the past two professional development days and a grant.
Excellent, thank you.
I think that's reflected in the agenda. So I'll start with the professional development. Is that first on? I don't have the agenda in front of me. I want to make sure.
The grant is first.
Oh, grant is first. I'll start with that. Thanks, Lisa. Does anybody need? So I'm excited to announce that Mile Tree, Stony Hill, and Green Meadow Schools have been awarded $136,875 through the Early Literacy Grant from Research to Practice, Evidence-Based Early Literacy. The purpose of the competitive early literacy grant is to increase teacher knowledge to implement evidence-based, inclusive, culturally responsive practices in early literacy through professional learning on evidence-based, inclusive, culturally responsive early literacy with a focus on the Mass Literacy Guide and the culturally responsive teaching and learning documents, teaching and leading, sorry. Funds for the grant may be used for in the following four categories: stipends, substitutes, evidence-based materials and screeners to progress monitor, and DESE-approved literacy consultants. The funding for this grant will extend through June 30th, 2023, and this funding has the potential to be available for an additional 2 years. Mile Tree, Green Meadows, and Stony Hill schools have each selected a core grant team of up to 6 individuals. These teams attended 2 full-day professional development institutes, one in October, one in January, and they will attend a showcase meeting in June. In addition, school-based literacy consultants will facilitate 6 90-minute after-school meetings for the grant team and up to 20 additional educators per school who opt to participate. All participating educators receive a stipend, $1,500 for each grant team member and $750 for each additional educator who's just joining the after-school professional learning. Each school will also be funded for 320 hours of school-based work with an expert literacy consultant. This support includes collaborating with the established school-based literacy leadership team, implementing evidence-based, inclusive, culturally responsive early literacy instruction through grade 3, promoting equity of access and academic achievement for diverse students, coaching individual teachers and administration, and co-facilitating after-school professional learning focused on Tier 1 instruction. Our consultants are Dr. Heidi Wojcik, an assistant professor in the education department at Worcester State University, and Makeda Almeida, professor and coordinator of the elementary education department at Quinn Sigmund Community College. Through this grant, we'll be able to build capacity to provide evidence-based, inclusive, and culturally responsive early literacy instruction, and use data to inform instruction in grades K through grade 3. This is a complement to our new high-quality core instructional materials, and it will allow us to provide targeted professional learning opportunities for each of the schools with kindergarten through grade 3.
So, how many, are the coaches primarily the people who are doing the grant, facilitating it, or are there staff being hired, or is there consultants coming in? I know you mentioned some consultants. I wondered how that was working.
The building principals are the
Hello?
coordinator.
You can't, we can hear you.
Hi, John.
I don't know what I need to do. Maybe it's something on my end. I don't want to disturb the meeting though.
Oh, you won't?
All right, let me hang up because it's making an echo, John.
Okay.
Are we good? Yeah, okay. So the principals at each building are facilitating the grant. I'm supporting them through that. And we have the two literacy consultants that I mentioned that are coming in and supporting the after-school, the planning for the after-school professional development. They're supporting work that's happening during the day in terms of Tier 1, Tier 2 instruction, and our literacy coaches are working alongside them, and they're kind of working as a bigger literacy team at each of the buildings.
So when the grant ends, what happens to the people who are working with the coaches?
The consultants,
Yes.
they're only working with us through the grant. So when if we receive any additional funds for year 2 or 3, we're hoping that we can have the same literacy consultants continue.
And is the vehicle to enact this grant the professional development half days that you're giving, like on the 8th and the January?
It's they are providing 6 90-minute after-school professional developments. However, both of the literacy consultants are supporting planning and some of the facilitation for some of the half days as well. So we're able to continue to collaborate with them for more than just those 6 after-school days.
And I noticed on the paperwork that some of the things planned out weren't exactly fitting in the grant in terms of like the PE teachers are going to consult for a time on their half day for their plans for the end of the school year.
The grant is specifically for K-3 literacy. So there's, when we look at the professional development that we've offered in January and in just today in February, that's not exclusive to literacy. That's all encompassing from January 20th, K-12, and that was all had an early release.
I guess that's where I got confused when I was reading through it, because some things seem to fit a grant for literacy and some things seem to fit collaboration with a team.
That the 2 documents for professional learning were for the entire district, not exclusive to the literacy or to the grant.
Okay, thank you. Any questions?
Was this the extension grant? Like if you had gotten the grant the year before, this was the grant where you could apply again and it was added on?
Yes, but we didn't have it for last year, so
Okay.
this was our first year with it.
Or there was another grant for early literacy that had to do specifically with screening kids 2 times a year. It wasn't that grant.
I think it's connected to that. There's 2 versions of it, and since we came in on this year, we were screening students with DIBELS 3 times a year as part of the grant, even though we have another universal screening tool that we've used in the past at the elementary level. Part of the grant is to use the DIBELS screening tool.
DIBELS is on their list of approved screeners. Yeah, now that they have the list.
Yeah. So,
So are we not doing FAST anymore?
we're still,
Bridgewater?
yep, we're still using FastBridge. What the K-3 had already administered FastBridge in the fall, and so we got into the grant not till October, so a lot of the screenings were done. So we did a DIBELS administration at that time, and had a kind of a team that came in and did the testing, so we didn't have to try to burden teachers with all of that. And then we just tested DIBELS for K-3 literacy in the in our January data collection, because we didn't want to have too much testing happening. We will test DIBELS and FastBridge at the end of the year, so we have that, at least the longitudinal data for FastBridge. We won't lose that.
Okay. And will you be giving a, kind of an overview of how the January testing went at the various levels, eventually to the committee?
If that's what you would like, sure.
Yeah, that would be great.
Just I have just a summary of the professional development. I won't read, you have the document, so you can see if you have any questions about specific offerings. January 20th was a pre-K to 12 early release day. So at Minnetonka, this was the transition between their first and second terms. The high school students had January 19th and 20th as an early release. Teachers completed tasks related to the end of term 1 and prepared for their new courses that will be teaching in term 2. Wilbraham Middle School and Green Meadows, grades 6 to 8 participated in part 1 of the youth mental health first aid training. Part 2 took place today for them. Pre-K to 3 teachers worked with the literacy coaches and literacy consultants on topics related to early literacy skills and the DIBELS assessments to help gather information about their readers and plan for instruction. We also had grade 4 and 5 teachers work with our math consultant Sarah Bent, exploring evidence-based strategies to support student thinking in math class. Our elementary science specialists continued their work implementing the various components of Project Lead the Way and looking at what that grant funds, making their plans for the rest of the year. Our pre-K through 12 nurses were trained in Stop the Bleed, and that's the training and skills that are needed to quickly stop blood loss and potentially save a life during a crisis or traumatic situation. They will be able to provide training and refresher courses for all educators in the district moving forward.
I think we've had Stop the Bleed in the past.
We have, yep,
Yeah.
but pre-COVID, so we really need to
Caught up.
have that as a regular review training refresher, because it's really important. Highlights from today, February 8th, was a pre-K through 8 early release day. Psychological first aid training, which is a prerequisite for post-traumatic stress management training. That will occur on March 15th. Participants included counselors, some administrators, BCBAs, school psychologists. So this is another round of psychological first aid training to prepare for March 15th. So we have a big roster of people trained in that, and that's a full day training on March 15th. The elementary data team meetings were facilitated by building principals, school psychologists, and coaches, and teachers analyzed a variety of students' data in literacy and math, including the universal screening data, to plan for their targeted instruction. Middle school math teachers are continuing to plan for aligned math programming and instruction. They examined resources to determine the extent to which each of the programs meets their identified priorities in math, and they continue to make plans on visiting different school districts, implementing illustrative math in its different forms, and thinking about piloting different parts of it. And the elementary related arts educators continue to collaborate in their content area. And that's my summary, but there was a lot more happening. If you have any questions about anything else on the professional development?
I don't have
schedule?
a question, but I do have a thought. When the high school did their roundtable, and found out about language and yoga, when I went to the yoga one, I was very impressed because the two students there started talking about how they dealt with mental health and how hard it was for them. And they're good students, and they take things seriously, and they said nothing really worked until they started taking yoga. And when they took yoga, they felt happy. And on the days they didn't have yoga, they weren't as happy. And I'm thinking that a lot of times our mental first aid is a lot of talk with the kids instead of a lot of doing. And I'm wondering if there's any way that we could look at any kind of expansion to yoga. I don't even know if there's a, kids who really want to take it, but I know that they would be crushed if it was ever not allowed. I wondered what you guys thought.
Yeah, we really like yoga. We like it as an option for kids who may not enjoy the traditional physical education. I think your comment really speaks to what we're identifying as a staff in needing a health curriculum from pre-K to 12. Right now, our health curriculum is delivered through the physical education classes, but we don't have a dedicated health teacher where students have that curriculum for a quarter or a semester. And very often in health, I know Courtney DeRoja does some elements of yoga in her health classes because that's part of exploring what works for you. Yoga might work for some, and talk therapy might work for others, and being physical and active might help for others. So trying to give those kids a broad base of different experiences. So we have no plans to eliminate yoga. We would like to see it expand through that addition of a dedicated health educator.
Great, thank you. I also think, I know that, and I'm not sure if it's still going on, but I know that the elementary school level second step was the method of choice for mental health. It's hard to get one system that goes K to 12. I don't know of any actually. So I applaud your efforts, and I hope it works out that we can get an integrated program that would service the entire district.
And we're starting to think in terms of, right now our department is called Phys Ed, Health and Developmental Guidance, because our school counselors do a lot of work through the Phys Ed classes on school counseling work in terms of, accessing Naviance accounts, getting ready for your first job. We do our whole career readiness program with sophomores through the Phys Ed department, how to create a resume. They bring in people to do mock interviews, that kind of thing, because sophomore year is usually when kids start to get their first part-time job. But we've really started to talk about, is that department better identified as wellness, as student wellness, which you could still have developmental guidance, still have health curriculum, still have physical activity, still have yoga, but really more encompasses what we're looking at in terms of what kids need.
Well, one other thing too is that I would say it's in the back of our minds, not quite in the forefront, but when we went to the Mass conference this year, we spent quite a bit of time with a person and people who are doing therapy dogs in schools. And
we have worked really hard at trying to figure out how we called a high school, was it up in the North Shore? My Boston accent just came out. Yeah, we called that high school to see how they got it approved, because we weren't sure what the steps were. Like, do we have to first go to school committee to get approval, and then we have to create a relationship with a therapy dog provider. Right. Then we need to figure out who's the staff member that's going to own that dog, because that dog has to go home with someone.
Yes.
And
then
that
person has to be trained as a therapy dog owner. Yes.
Right. And then that person has to be accessible, because you can't just, if I'm the owner of the dog, I can't just put the dog in guidance and say, see you later, I'll pick you up at the end of the day. It's kind of a dog that goes side by side. We talked to the police department earlier this year, because police departments are kind of moving away from canine units that would search or that kind of thing, and being more social emotional support dogs, because many of the calls they're responding to are social emotional calls.
Well, I'm glad to hear that you're.
We are
for it,
investigating.
and, luckily, we have a superintendent that, in his last, gig, had therapy dogs. And,
I want a
in
big old
schools.
Saint Bernard.
Okay, okay.
Slobber everywhere, hair
John's on
everywhere.
in the ear, from your mouth to John's ear.
We would love it. We would love it.
All right, thank you. Any other questions? Okay. So, thank you, Lisa, I appreciate your update, and it sounds like you're pretty busy.
We are busy.
Yes.
Yep.
All right, so.
Is John raising his hand?
What?
I just wanted to let you know that my personal therapy dog is here at the meeting with me, and it's been very enjoyable for me.
Thank you. All right,
Excellent.
so the program of studies and proposed changes, there were, it was really interesting. I'm wondering, some of the things that came in, what propelled you with some of these changes? Because they could have been in the first draft. I just was curious about that.
So every year, this is a process that we go through. It starts in really October-ish, where we ask teachers themselves if there's any particular courses that they would like to propose for the program of studies. So they have a form that they fill out, resources that they have to gather, etc. They meet with us and talk about the course, what the course might look like, how it might fit into frameworks, and that kind of thing. And then department chairs are also involved in that step. We also review our student exit data. So every year we'll do a student survey, and one of the questions is, what kind of classes would you like to take in the child? So we go back to that qualitative data to see where student interests are. And then we also look at trends. So some of the things that you'll see in here represent changes that we're seeing at the college board level, etc. And also expansion of AP offerings to try and get more students involved in advanced placement courses. So all of those, student improvement council as well, where families and kids are involved in that process. But go ahead.
And also some from paying attention to the trends at the middle schools and what students are involved with elementary through middle school. Specifically, we'll talk about music offerings.
Yeah, I was looking
and
at
some
that.
new things that are there that students have expressed maybe some interest in, and also trying to capitalize on the rebound post-COVID in the bands and the strings, and seeing how we can get that to continue on up to the high school.
I know we have a time crunch on this. Is there a way we can back it up maybe next year and do it a little earlier, or is there things that happen that have to happen before you go into your plan?
Typically, it's somewhere around this time that we're presenting. I mean, I would guess the earliest we've ever presented is mid-December, and the latest we've ever presented is probably beginning of March.
Okay.
So it's somewhere in that window. Being February 8th, I'd love to be able to hit the target around mid-January. That would be a prime time to present, and just the ebb and flow of the year and that kind of thing impacts that. But yeah, I think mid-January would be ideal. Would you agree, Keith?
I would too, and thinking of our timeline for how you go about building a schedule for a new school year. You kind of, ideally on the first day of school, everyone has a schedule, every teacher has a schedule, every student has a schedule, so you have to back up from there to look at all the steps to make that happen. And so starting with course proposals and getting this part, because from the time that it's approved, then we have everything set to roll for
counselors going to middle school to talk to students coming to the high school, and for students to make course selections, and then to tally those things up and figure out what we're gonna run, what, you know, it all is all connected. So I agree with you that mid-January is really an ideal spot to be.
So what we should do is put into the calendar for whoever's the chair next year for this, to have it in mid-January and have a slot for it.
That would be great.
Okay. Let's hear that.
So we were gonna just hit a couple highlights. I know you have the document, rather than go through it and then open it up for questions, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Great. Keith, you wanna talk about, we picked kind of 3 of the more significant ones, but you wanna talk about C-Tech?
So for career technical education, it's a huge change coming up. We've gone from a 2/3-year program for our students to, it is now a 4-year program. So students and families are going to have to decide coming out of 8th grade if they want to go to C-Tech. And what that means for our students is half the time they're here at Minichild, they're over at C-Tech. So in the past, where we had them their complete freshman year to work and make sure we get all the diploma requirements completed, we have less time to do that now. So in order to do that, the technical education programs have what we call academic equivalencies. And they're from the MAS frameworks embedded into their programs. So for example, some of the programs would have academic equivalencies for math or science or fine arts, and we've identified all of those. So in order for our students to be able to meet all of the Minichild diploma requirements, we'll have to use the academic equivalencies based on the shop that they, or program that they end up in. So we will be doing that. We do have a 4-year academic plan created for each of the programs. There's 11 programs, and so that they are, each one is different, and depending on a student's academic progress, whether they meet the standard for MCAS, they may have to take an EPP math their senior year. So we're trying to plan for all of those contingencies laid out in this 4-year plan for each of those shops. We do have one school counselor who is the counselor for all of our C-Tech students now. So she will go through the 4-year plan with each student based on their shop to make sure that the students and the families are well aware of their requirements. So a big change with that is, instead of freshman year where the counselors would get the application and do the evaluation on the students, that is now moving down into the middle school. And Mrs. Constantine has already arranged, and they've had the assemblies with the career tech representatives in each of the middle schools so that families and students are aware. C-Tech will also be invited to our 8th grade orientation on the 28th of this month as another option for families to inquire. April 1st is the deadline for applications for C-Tech. So all of that will have to be completed. We've already started with our current 9th grade. This will be our last 9th grade class applying to C-Tech. And that application is an online application. So Mrs. Constantine will be working with the 8th grade counselors to make sure all of those applications are completed properly. So it's a big change culturally for us, academically speaking, and I think a big decision, or difficult decision, is for those 8th grade students as to, do they want to try it? They can go to C-Tech and not like it and come back, but there would be a small opportunity for a freshman to come in and decide to apply for their sophomore year, but those opportunities will be very limited based on what's available over at C-Tech.
Like an 8th grader that wants to go into a 9th grade, say, landscaping and has an IEP? How does that work?
So they do have special educators over there, not as many as we have, but they do have responsibilities to cover IEP accommodations. Those academic classes that they take here, they will be assigned a course or a class with, we're using the term, I think, co-taught. There will be a special educator in the classroom to meet those requirements.
And they'll get the same accommodations for MCAS that they would get here?
Yes.
They take a good
They take-
MCAS.
They
They
are
take
passed
the
with us.
adjustment.
Does that ninth grader have to begin with the exploratory course, or they?
Yes,
Okay.
everybody has to, even if, like our current sophomores, the first semester is exploratory, because they say they may want to be in cosmetology, and get over there and like, that's not really what I thought it was, and come across a shop that, oh, I didn't realize this is really cool, I want to try that, and go into that shop.
How difficult do you think it will be, because I know once the schedule's in place, it's in place for a child to opt out mid-year from,
We can do it at the mid-year point, so they would have to stay for one semester.
okay, we can't just say, wake up on October 1st and say, this isn't really for me.
If it happened like within a few days, then we could make those accommodations based on our availability for scheduling. But once we get past the 2-week mark, I think they're pretty much obligated.
Easy to opt back in, because that's gonna create more scheduling opportunities for them going forward. It becomes harder to go back to try and get everything that we needed to do, but that's where those academic equivalencies come into play. And Keith's done a really good job. I mean, when you think of 11 different shops, so we have a college plan, 4-year college plan for students and families, like this is what we think you should take to be eligible to go to a 4-year school. Here's what we think you should take over your 4 years to go to a 2-year school. And now we have 11 different pathways for the 11 different shops, because each shop has different academic equivalencies. So it's really well laid out, and it's a very clear path going forward. So that's a good thing. But it's a narrow path, but very clear.
I think this is where you ask for a raise. Oh, you got to 1 to 11.
Been around long enough.
The credits for graduation didn't have to be changed or anything like that?
So we're keeping those the same, but in order to meet, say, if it's 3 science, then they can get 2 science here. We could use a science academic equivalent to meet our local diploma requirements.
Okay.
They still have to meet all the state
Sure.
requirements.
Yeah, some school districts actually went with a different set of graduation requirements. When I called some of the other principals to say, hey, how did you do this? Some of the principals said that they actually created, here are the C-Tech graduation requirements and here are the Minichog graduation requirements. We didn't really love that idea because they're all Minichog kids, no matter where they go. So how can we make this work where it's one set of graduation requirements? And that's when those 11 different plans came through. So it's, it'll be a lot of tracking work, you know, because if everyone here is in my counseling group, if I'm Renee Considine, you might be in cosmetology, and you might be in landscaping, Michelle, and you might be in data system management, Cheryl. And so I've got to keep an eye on what classes you all sign up for, because I want to make sure we're getting you on track to graduate.
How many kids are you anticipating?
That's the big
That's a
mystery.
big
We don't know if
question.
it's going to be 2 or 30. So we know there's interest. Once they find the details out, you know, they may change their mind. Hopefully, a lot of them went to the open house last night over at CTAC, which we promoted, and had some questions answered and got to see the facility, which is pretty impressive if you've never been there. So it's a mystery. We really don't know.
We have seen our career tech numbers grow though over the last, 5 years, when, there could have been 5 years ago, maybe 10 or 12 students who were up around mid-30s.
30s, yeah.
Yeah.
30s, little 30s.
How many buses?
Still just one,
Okay.
because as the kids matriculate through, right, seniors pretty much want to
Juniors and
drive
seniors.
themselves, they don't want to
Right.
jump on the
Yeah.
bus, so,
Yeah.
I saw one of the buses go by the other day and there were like 4 girls in it.
yeah, that happens.
And you have those that go in the morning and those that go in the
Yeah.
afternoon, so.
Yeah, the different grade levels go at different times.
Well, this was a lot of work, but I think it's well worth it.
And it's in alignment with the strategic plan, right? That's one of the key themes was to create more pathways for students to pursue vocational education. And this provides a big step forward in that where 9th graders now can go. So all boats are in alignment going towards the same target.
Is there a limit to the number of students that they can take?
There is. This past year, they had, I think, 250 applications, and they ended up bringing in 189 new students this year. They have set the limit at 200. So it may come down to a competitive process for any student to get into a career tech program. It's becoming more popular.
It wouldn't be luck of the draw, kind of like school choice.
They get evaluated on certain categories by the counselor for acceptance. But once they're there for the exploratory, they're also being evaluated so that if, there's any misbehavior or they're not doing any projects or anything that they're supposed to be working on, that could affect their evaluation. And if to get into, say, a competitive shop, they may not get their first choice because of that, or they may lose out. I don't know exactly how they're going to be making those determinations.
I mean, they've also talked about expanding themselves though. Like they're expanding some of their departments
Right, so-
and adding,
Yeah,
talking about adding criminal justice.
yes, so that's the one that they can add without having a new facility.
Mhm.
A few years ago, they added the manufacturing machining, and that was a huge expenditure, a huge amount of space taken up. They don't have any more space.
Mhm.
They can use criminal justice in the classroom, so that they're looking at adding, it won't be next year, but probably the following year. They're pretty confident.
And that's where the school committee advocacy can be really helpful because I had mentioned in October or November at Sewell Road, they have been talking about, CTEC has been talking about their admissions process where member districts do not get any preference over non-member districts. So South Hadley's a non-member, right?
Right. And
It says
was-
on their website that member districts do get preference.
Oh, so maybe they changed that, because that's what they were discussing with
It says
us.
it on the CTEC website, it's one of like the first things that it says.
Okay,
And then if you look at
Some-
how they enroll, it says that they get a preference.
that's great. That's great news, because that's
Yeah,
different
that
than
was-
what we were being told.
If that's new, I'd like, that's good to hear, because that's
We
what
have
they
that
were
meeting next
expressing
week,
to
right?
us. That it was all based upon completed applications, that they'll look at the properly completed applications first, and then assign slots accordingly, and at the time of our last conversation, there was no preference being given to member districts. So that's good to hear.
I'm sorry, I'm not sure if you can see me, but I can speak to that last point.
Great.
After the Sewell Road meeting, I did have a conversation with the executive director about the need for preferences for students who are part of the collaborative, and he assured me that as a member district, our students would continue to have a preference.
Excellent, thank you.
That's good.
Great news.
Yeah, good job.
Nikki, you want to talk about AP Hug, is that what you call it?
Yeah, AP Hug, sure. Unless, are you all set with CTAC or you have any questions?
If you do have any additional questions, you can give me a call or an email.
Sure. So AP Human Geography, or AP Hug, which is pretty cute. Actually, this is really, I'm excited about it because this is our first opportunity to offer an AP class to a freshman. And this is human geography, not just physical geography, where we're talking about aspects of the land and formations and all of that, but human geography. And that explores, and you can read it there, looking at populations and how they've evolved over time, and expanded movement as a theme of geography, and looking at the world through that lens. It is age appropriate for a freshman, meaning that in the construction of it, this AP Human Geography is not a new AP course. I have a niece who successfully took it in Texas as a freshman. So they were careful to consider the content so that we're not putting 14, 15-year-olds into a subject matter that, or in a learning atmosphere that they aren't capable of handling. It is, however, a new concept, so in speaking with Keith and then connecting with the middle schools about not just CTEC, but also how do we consider a 13-year-old or to go into an AP type of a class, and what types of study skills have they demonstrated, what types of aptitudes have they demonstrated, and opportunities to go for it and go ahead and see what they can come up with. So I'm excited to offer that for sure, see how many of them go for it. I don't think they should be afraid of it. I think that we have a lot of students in our middle school programs, and both of them that would definitely be able to handle it. So just wanted to reinforce that the structure of the course is such that it's created for a younger person to be able to have that type of a rigorous challenge, and College Board recognizes it in that fashion. So that's AP Hug.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just a couple of things about some of the new electives. So in trying to, in band, we have a very large percussion group coming up from 8th grade. So one of the challenges for Dave Morris is, oh my goodness, what am I going to do with all these drummers? So he came up with this idea, and he went to visit a couple of other high schools that have this, that instead of having your percussionists in your band rehearsal class, they would be a separate class and practice the music that the band kids are practicing, and also work on techniques. And then periodically during the year, he would bring them together before performances, etc. But it would really allow those percussionists to get more specialized instruction. So that was one change that he was proposing in the show choir. And I don't know how familiar you are with show choir.
That's what I've read.
I am not familiar with show choir, but yes, it's singing and dancing. I had to ask Nikki, what is this show choir thing? And she's a Southern girl.
Well, it's more, show choir is widely popular in other parts of our country, the Midwest and the South, yes. But anybody that caught on a while ago with the program Glee, you get an idea of what show choir does. So it's more than just musical performance, but it integrates movement and dance and storytelling, and it's a whole larger type of performance that you would find maybe, if anyone had Broadway aspirations for acting that come into play as well. So it's a shot. We'll see if the interest is there. It's exciting to see. It can be competitive as well. There are large-scale competitions among show choirs. So,
Are there high schools in our area that have show choirs?
there are some in the Commonwealth, but as far as New England goes, there's not a lot. So this is just one of those areas where
We could be the first.
you never know. You never know.
Yeah, I'm excited to see it.
Yeah.
I was in choir in high school, but that was for alternative motives. Yeah, I don't know about show choir, what that looks like, but Tom Ingram is really excited about it, and he's going, I think he's going, did he go today or tomorrow? He's bringing
Today?
the
Yeah.
choir group
The
down
state one.
to talk to the 8th grade students about the different offerings, and so to try and do that recruitment, and Dave has gone down to work with the 8th grade band director as well to try and make sure, and also gone to Green Meadow, so they're trying to get that matriculation and excitement going.
And if anybody saw Matilda Junior at Wilbraham Middle, or just,
Mm.
there's a large subgroup of kids that love to sing, love to dance, love to perform, and we want to try to bring that on up to the high school so that they have an avenue. We don't have a drama department or a theater department at the high school, but we want to be able to make sure that kids are able to follow their passion.
And the last one I'll talk about is accounting for business, which in many program of studies over the last couple of years, we've had an accounting class. And that is very typical course that you would see a student take in going to Bentley, Bryant, Babson, where they're gonna major in business or marketing, they'll take an accounting class. Kind of a very stiff, kind of dry, this is how you do accounting stuff. That's me calling families about open house tomorrow night. So your cell phones might start ringing, sorry. Accounting for business takes it down a step because we have a ton of kids who own and operate their own businesses. Landscaping businesses, Mary,
Oh, yeah.
former graduate, she built that thing.
Yeah, she had several $100s of my money she paid.
Yeah. There's a lot of current students with landscaping business and recent grads. We have dog walkers that run their own business, babysitters. So this accounting.
Furniture flippers.
Oh yeah, I got a couple of them too. So this really targets those students to say, okay, you're gonna run your own business, you're gonna operate your own business, but what do you really need to know about taxes, liability insurance, and how do you use either Google Sheets or QuickBooks to really kind of manage your money flow, your expenses, etc., and make it a more legitimized business. So we're excited. The kids work with Mr. Savoy, our business teacher, about this, saying this is something they wanted to learn more about. So we're excited about that possibility.
Could that be dovetailed into the opportunity to work one
Internship?
internship?
Yes.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
would be great. 'Cause
We typically like kids who own their own business to work with someone else because you're trying to learn from an expert in the field.
Yeah.
So if you're leaving school to go do your own business, you're not really interacting with an expert in the field other than yourself. But we have made accommodations for that based on, Kate DeMary had a large landscaping business, and she eventually sold it to John O'Keefe,
Yeah.
because now she's in New York City and she couldn't do both. So we do make those accommodations, but we'd really like to, if I was starting a landscaping business, go work with John O'Keefe as your internship, learn from him, or work in John O'Keefe's office with the office manager to learn that side of it if you don't need to learn how to be hands-on. So there's flexibility, but we tend to like them to be with an expert in the field. And then the other suggested changes are in there, if there's anything you have specific questions about.
So these are all add-ons, nothing's getting eliminated?
Correct.
Okay.
The only thing we have to go through the scheduling process.
Sure.
So everything in the program studies currently would be in the scheduling process, and then what happens is the kids sign up for it, and we have to make decisions around, okay, 3 kids signed up for this class.
Sure.
We're not gonna run it. It doesn't mean we're eliminating it from the program of studies. Much like a college or a university would do that.
Well, language, I was talking, again, with those students out in the hall, and they were showing me their Spanish skills. One of the things that I was impressed with was that they were learning vocabulary. You know, they might not be conjugating verbs, but they were learning a lot of vocabulary and having a lot of fun doing it.
Yeah, that's that proficiency model
Right.
change, right?
Right,
Instead of learning how to conjugate, 70 verbs in present, past,
that's
future,
Yeah.
past, present, all of that stuff. It's all about accessible language and getting them talking, getting them talking, getting them talking. And then if you get to a point where you need to learn something to express what you really want to express, learn that word.
Yeah.
And then it becomes part of your vocabulary. It's very similar to how kids learn to speak and read as they develop, right? They access words, they may use words in the wrong context, somebody shows them how, and then they adjust. They learn from hearing other people use words. So it's a lot more speaking, a lot more reading, and a lot more culture, so they can see how the language is being used in that way.
It was my impression that the teacher was more engaged too.
Yes.
She really loved it.
Yeah, she loves it. She's the Italian expert,
Mhm.
Dr. Benedetti, and then also Mr. Milbeer, who's currently teaching some Spanish, can also speak Italian. So
Is
there's
this in
some-
preparation for the trip?
No, it's student interest, faculty interest, She was like, can we have a conversational Spanish? And Italian. I said, sure, write it up. What would it look like? What would the content be? What would the syllabus look like? We'll definitely take a look at it. And she did a great job with it. And I think kids will like that, especially seniors, kind of gone through everything you need to go through. I've taken 3 years of Spanish or 4 years of Spanish or 3 years of French, and I feel like I'm kind of done, but maybe I still want to dip my toe in the languages because I enjoy that. This is a good opportunity for that.
I think I only have one more question, and that was throughout what I read. I was thinking that there's a lot of AP courses available, which is good. There's a lot of different courses available at his interest levels, but a lot of the courses will demand money. Are we going to help subsidize that for children who might want to take 2 AP courses and don't have the money to take the exams? And I just made note of each thing that would actually take money out of a parent's pocket.
Yeah, definitely. I don't think, we don't have any textbook fees or anything like that, like a college or university might have. I think the things that you're looking at are...
Renting the percussion instruments, just a lot of things that
Sure.
look great would cost money.
So percussion, someone doesn't have to, my son plays tom-toms, which is the 4 drums kind of thing. We don't have a tom-tom at home. He has drum mats and sticks, and that's how he does that. And we would own most of the equipment that kids would be accessing, and band also has a budget if they needed to get more. We have a great relationship with Jerry's Music. You remember them coming into the school, so they will give us pieces that we need to rent for the year, and the school will rent it, not the kid. It won't be the saxophone going home with the kid every day. It's more like that. But definitely the AP testing is a concern as we continue to add more, and we've had those discussions at the school committee level about, is there anything in our financial planning where we could help subsidize students to, once again, encourage AP enrollment and to motivate. I think you saw that in Molly's letter as well. So we are interested in that. We also have a scholarship program internally in the counseling center where students who are identified as reduced or free lunch, we help subsidize their AP exams.
I think it's something that we have to continually look at and see, think outside the box for, because I think this is wonderful. I think offering all these interesting things is wonderful, but for a child to then open up and give it to mom and dad and they say, we can't afford this.
Right. And that's challenging for a lot of families.
Yeah, it's getting more so, I think.
And that's probably been the biggest restrictor to us moving forward with requiring the test.
Oh, right.
Because
If you
then,
require it, you have to.
correct, correct. But, you know, it has been some initial thoughts about, you know, can we reach out to local businesses, et cetera, to see if we could create, you know how we do the sponsor a senior program. Well, we've just done our business outreach, and the local businesses were really supportive of our senior program, and now we're getting ready to send it out to the district staff, where we say, does anybody want to sponsor a specific senior? And we've already ordered the gift bags that they get and everything. So thinking about that type of model for AP students.
A lot of questions. Do you have any more questions?
Question, I don't know if you can actually answer the question, but just last year, of any of the classes that you had looked at adding, were there any that were not as successful as you had hoped? Or were there ones that were just like off the charts popular?
We can, I can
I'm
get
just-
you
I'm
that
just
data.
curious.
This
Yeah,
product
that's what I figured.
We have to go back to,
Yeah.
Oh, I
yeah,
can tell
just
you.
anecdotally.
We've
Yeah,
had to tell
just
kids they
totally.
can't get yoga because yoga's full.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's a constant. I've always liked to encourage students to take accounting, which we've offered, but haven't had enough students to run the program. So those are just two examples that I can think of.
I know we knew we had the, in computer sciences, we had the mobile app,
Yes.
and we had,
All of those ran.
those ran,
Okay.
and the kids were liking them a lot.
Okay.
And we had several students that I made schedule changes for second semester that decided to take AP Comp Sci. So that was good.
Mhm.
And I'm trying to remember some of the other ones that were.
No pressure, I was just curious.
No, it's okay.
Just, you put so much work into
You
this.
switched
and I
gears.
just- Yeah, just curious.
But we can look at that and get that
Sure.
to you.
Well, thank you so much for your work. Did you have a question?
No, I was just thinking about getting money for AP.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I don't know what the rules are for, if there are rules for fundraising at the high school. I'm not familiar with high school stuff, so rules for fundraising, and there's so many different clubs that fundraise, and I don't know if there's a,
Well, I think it would be, you know, how you and I think you also have to be cautious
and you don't wanna
about-
keep asking the same
Right.
people. That's
Right,
why you're
that's
like,
what I
okay,
was-
so how do you make it fair?
Right. So I was gonna approach Mike Stakowitz from Watt to see if we could do maybe a joint thing with Watt, where we don't wanna corner the market on what they're raising, but because it's an academic trust, could they dedicate
Like a
a
certain
certain
portion.
amount? And then at one of their fundraisers, we can do a big high school push to say, hey guys, you know, let's support this, because some part of this is gonna go to help supporting AP students. So that was an idea. I know I'm saying that on camera, I'm sorry, Mike, I haven't talked to him about it yet, or talked to the board, but that could be some way to, so that you're not stepping on the toes of, you know, how much money can GEOs give
Right.
the schools, or how much money can.
How many times have they been asking
Right.
different, you don't even know, so.
Right, and the banks are really supportive, and there are a lot of business, Hamden Market, which is now Armadas, they've been super supportive. So you do have to walk that delicate line, which is really the reason why we don't have a PTO, is because that would be another agency trying to raise money, and it becomes competition with the freshman class, sophomore class, junior
Yeah.
class, and senior class.
Because then I'm thinking about like, ooh,
Yeah.
like all the different sports that will fundraise, all the different like drama club, and you're like,
Yeah.
they're all probably asking around the same.
We try to funnel that all through student activities so that it doesn't bump into one another, and they're on one calendar, and so we're not running two fundraisers at the same time or trying to hit the
So
same.
student activities and like athletics talk to
Yes.
each other about it?
Yes. All athletic fundraisers are registered with student activities, yeah. But it's a lot,
Yeah,
it's a lot.
so I'm like, how many car washes, you know what I mean, like, oh,
You could dine out every night
Yeah.
of the school year if you wanted to.
but
Although
then it
you'd
kind
be
of
eating
loses the,
That's right. Yeah,
And that just a, you know, the sponsoring idea and all about the idea of any child in either of our communities that has demonstrated a lot of academic potential to be limited in accessing specific colleges or universities for lack of not being able to pay for a test is a hard pill to swallow. So I think that, you know, making sure that they can get there in any way that we can is always going to be a good thing.
Well, thank you, all of you, for your time tonight. John, do you have anything you want to say before we adjourn?
it's right over.
Yeah, there it is.
Yes. Echo your comments and thank the high school for their support and all the work they've done on this, especially with the transition to a new vocational model. I know that was hours and hours of work, but I think that it is something that's going to really benefit a lot of our kids. So thank you all for what you've done for that.
Thank you.
Can I have a motion to adjourn?
motion to adjourn.
Second.
Roll call vote. You?
Aye.
You?
Aye.
Me? Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.